When hope seemed lost her, Elena Vasquez pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the underground cavern, her breathing shallow and rapid in the thin air. The geological scanner in her trembling hands showed what she already knew. The massive seismic event had sealed every exit route she had mapped during her 3-month botanical expedition on Kepler-4 to be. Above her, tons of collapsed rock blocked any hope of digging out, and her emergency beacon had been transmitting into the void for 18 hours without response. The remote planet had seemed like paradise when she first arrived. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, Elena had volunteered for the dangerous solo mission to catalog the unique plant life that thrived in Kepler-4 to be's underground ecosystem, the bioluminescent forests that grew in vast cavern networks beneath. The planet's surface were unlike anything discovered in human space. These plants had evolved to survive without sunlight, creating their own energy through processes that challenged everything science understood about photosynthesis. Elena's research had been groundbreaking until the planet decided to remind her how hostile alien worlds could be. The tectonic shift had come without warning, triggering a cascade of cave-ins that transformed her underground laboratory into a potential tomb. Her portable habitat dome had survived the initial collapse, providing a bubble of breathable atmosphere, but the oxygen recycler was damaged and failing. She had perhaps 6 hours of air remaining, maybe 8 if she stayed perfectly still. Her hands worked methodically through her emergency kit, checking each item with the practiced efficiency of someone who had trained for worst-case scenarios. Emergency rations for 2 weeks, water purification tablets, medical supplies, and a backup communicator with enough power for one final transmission. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could survive for weeks if she had air to breathe, but the most essential element for life was slowly running out. Elena activated her personal log, speaking into the recorder with forced calm. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Xenobiological Survey Mission, Day 93. Catastrophic geological event has resulted in complete cavern collapse. All exit routes blocked. Oxygen supply critical. If anyone receives this message, please inform my parents that I died doing what I loved, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. She paused, looking around at the glowing plants that continued their alien dance of light, even as she faced death. The beauty down here is indescribable. I hope someday others will see what I've seen. The backup communicator crackled to life, startling her from her melancholy acceptance. The signal was weak, distorted by the layers of rock above, but unmistakably artificial. Someone or something was trying to communicate. Elena's heart raced as she adjusted the frequency, fine-tuning the reception until words became clear. Though they were unlike any language in human databases, the voice that emerged from the static was unlike anything she had ever heard. It had a musical quality, with tones that seemed to harmonize with themselves, creating complex patterns that suggested intelligence beyond human comprehension. The translator built into her communicator worked frantically, parsing linguistic structures and searching for mathematical patterns that might bridge the communication gap. Then, miraculously, words began to form in her native language, though spoken with an accent that seemed to come from another dimension entirely. Human life form, we detect your distress signature. Your biological indicators suggest imminent termination. We are the Etherians of the deep current who require assistance. Elena's voice caught in her throat before she managed to respond. Yes. I'm trapped underground, running out of oxygen. Can you help me? The response came more quickly, this time, as if her signal had helped them calibrate their translation systems. We approach your location now. Remain calm, human Elena. We will extract you from this stone embrace, through the thin atmosphere of her failing habitat. Elena began to hear something impossible, the sound of rock being moved with precision and care. Not the violent cracking of explosives or the grinding of heavy machinery, but something organic and patient. It was as if the stone itself was being persuaded to step aside rather than forced apart. The first breakthrough came as a trickle of fresh air through a gap no larger than her fist. Elena pressed her face to the opening, breathing deeply of atmosphere that carried strange scents, ozone and something floral, but alien. The gap widened gradually, revealing glimpses of soft, pulsing light beyond the rock. When the opening finally became large enough for her to squeeze through, Elena found herself face to face with beings that challenged every assumption she had made about alien life. The Etherians were tall and graceful, their bodies seemingly composed of living wood and flowing sap. Their skin had the texture of bark but the flexibility of flesh, with patterns of bioluminescent veins that pulse with gentle light. They moved with the fluid grace of trees swaying in a breeze, yet their actions showed unmistakable intelligence and purpose. The leader of the rescue team approached Elena with movements that conveyed both authority and profound gentleness. When it spoke, she realized the musical quality of their language came from the way they could produce multiple tones simultaneously, creating speech that was as much song as communication. I am Elder Synth of the Deep Current Exploration Vessel. You are in severe biological distress, human Elena. Will you permit us to provide healing assistance? Elena nodded weakly, her oxygen-starved brain struggling to process the reality of first contact with an utterly benevolent alien species. Elder Synth extended what might have been an arm or perhaps a specialized limb, and Elena felt a gentle, warm flow through her body as it made contact. The crushing weight in her chest eased immediately, and she realized they were somehow supplying her with breathable atmosphere. Directly through their touch, the journey to their ship took place, through tunnels that the Etherians had somehow convinced the rock to create. Elena walked in a bubble of breathable atmosphere, supported by beings who treated her rescue as a sacred duty rather than an inconvenience. Their vessel, when she finally saw it, was like nothing in human engineering. It appeared to be grown, rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that pulse with life. The ship existed in harmony with its environment rather than imposing upon it. In the medical bay, Elena experienced healing techniques that went beyond advanced technology into something approaching miraculous. The Etherians didn't use instruments or machines, but rather encouraged her body's natural healing processes through methods that seemed to blend science with something approaching art. They repaired damage from oxygen deprivation, strengthened her immune system, and left her feeling healthier than she had in years. During her recovery, Elena learned about Etherian civilization through conversations with Elder Synth and the crew. They were explorers and nurturers, a species that had achieved spaceflight millions of years ago but had never conquered or colonized. Instead, they traveled the galaxy seeking to understand and preserve life in all its forms. Their technology was based on cooperation with natural forces rather than domination over them. We saved you, human Elena, because all conscious life is precious, Elder Synth explained as they shared what the Etherians call the knowledge harmonization, a process that allowed for deeper communication than mere words. Your species is young but shows great potential. We ask nothing in return for this aid, for to preserve life is to preserve the universe's greatest miracle. Elena spent 3 weeks aboard the Etherian vessel, as they transported her to the nearest human outpost. During that time, she learned more about alien biology, psychology, and philosophy than humanity had discovered in centuries of speculation. The Etherians shared freely, asking only that she carry their message of peace and cooperation back to her species. When they finally reached human space, the farewell was deeply emotional. Elder Synth approached Elena one final time, extending the same gentle limb that had first saved her life in the collapsed cavern. Remember us fondly, Elena of Earth. Perhaps someday the currents of fate will bring our species together again. In friendship, Elena gripped the alien's limb with both hands, tears flowing freely down her face. I will never forget what you've done for me. If there's ever anything humanity can do to repay this kindness, you only need to ask. Elder Synths. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what Elena had learned was the Etherian expression of deep contentment. Store this moment in your heart, dear human. The universe has a way of balancing all debts in time. The return to Earth changed Elena's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. Her testimony about the Etherians influenced humanity's first official xenological protocols, establishing principles of peaceful contact and mutual respect. She rose through the ranks of Earth's expanding space program, driven by the memory of beings who had risked their mission and their safety to save a single human life, simply because it was the right thing to do. But it would be 50 years before Elena truly understood what Elder Synth had meant about the universe balancing its debts. 50 years later, a desperate plea Admiral Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of Luna Command, her silver hair reflecting the blue glow of Earth below. At 73, she commanded humanity's most advanced fleet and served as the primary architect of Earth's defensive strategies. The decades since her rescue on Kepler 4b had seen humanity's dramatic expansion across the galaxy, establishing colonies on dozens of worlds and making contact with 37 different alien species. The galaxy had proven to be a more dangerous place than those early optimistic years had suggested. While species like the Etherians represented the best of what intelligent life could achieve, others had shown humanity the darker possibilities of galactic civilization. The Krolex hegemony had attempted to enslave human colonies before being driven back by superior human tactics. The Silicon Collective had tried to strip mine Earth's moon until diplomacy and the threat of force convinced them to find resources elsewhere. But none of these encounters had prepared Elena for the message that arrived through deep space channels during what should have been a routine strategy meeting. The transmission came coded in frequencies that human technology barely recognized, heavily encrypted and showing signs of desperate haste in its construction. When the communications specialist finally broke through the encryption, the words that emerged made Elena's blood freeze. To Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Earth Defense Command. This is Elder Synth of the Etherian Deep Current, transmitted from the last free ship of our people. The time of balancing has come. Dear friend, we face total extinction at the hands of the Vorthan Empire. Our peaceful ways have left us defenseless against their doctrine of absolute conquest. Our worlds burn, our people die, and soon there will be no Etherians left in the universe. We have nowhere else to turn. If you remember the debt between us, if you remember the principles of life preservation that we once shared, we humbly request humanity's aid. We understand this places your species at terrible risk, but we have no other hope. The silence in the command center was absolute. Elena stared at the communication transcript, her hands trembling slightly as memories of her rescue flooded back. Elder Synth, the being who had saved her life and asked for nothing in return, was now pleading for help as his entire civilization faced genocide. General Harrison, Elena's second-in-command, was the first to break the silence. Admiral, intelligence reports on the Vorthan Empire make for grim reading. They control over 100 star systems through a policy of total species replacement. Every world they conquer is stripped of its native life and repopulated with Vorthan colonies. They don't just defeat their enemies, they erase them completely. Elena activated the holographic display, showing the Vorthan Empire's expansion across the galaxy. The red zones indicating Vorthan control had grown dramatically over the past decade, consuming entire sectors with methodical efficiency. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming technological superiority and the complete elimination of any species they deemed genetically inferior. What are our current fleet capabilities? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Would be discouraging. Colonel Martinez, head of strategic planning, called up fleet disposition charts. We have 47 capital ships operational, including the new Titan-class dreadnoughts. Total fleet strength is approximately 300 vessels of all classes. Intelligence estimates Vorthan military strength at over 1,000 capital ships, with support fleets numbering in the tens of thousands. The tactical computer began running probability simulations based on available data. Every scenario ended the same way: total destruction of human forces within the first week of engagement. By every measure of conventional warfare, helping the Etherians would be suicide. Defense Secretary Williams leaned forward, his expression grave. Admiral, while we all respect the debt humanity owes, we must consider the survival of our species. The Vorthans have made it clear that any species interfering with their expansion will be marked for total elimination. We could be condemning billions of humans to death. Elena stood silently for long moments, staring at the tactical displays showing humanity's pitiful fleet strength compared to Vorthan might. Then she began to speak, her voice carrying the weight of decades of command and the memory of floating helplessly in an alien cavern. 50 years ago, I was dying alone on a distant world. The Etherians had no strategic interest in saving me. I offered them nothing in return for rescue. By every practical calculation, they should have ignored my distress signal and continued their mission. Instead, they risked their ship, their crew, and their safety to preserve one human life because they believed consciousness was precious. She turned to face the assembled officers, her eyes bright with unshed tears and unwavering determination. They asked for nothing in return except that we remember their kindness. Today, we discover what that memory is worth. Elena activated the main holographic display, showing intelligence reports on Etherian civilization. These beings have contributed more to galactic knowledge and peaceful cooperation than any species in recorded history. They've shared their medical advances freely, helping dozens of species overcome genetic disorders. Their agricultural techniques have ended famines on worlds across 3 sectors. They've never conquered, never enslaved, never committed genocide. General Harrison stood, his expression troubled. Admiral, no one questions the Etherians' worth or the debt we owe them. But if we engage the Vorthan Empire, we're not just risking our fleet, we're risking the extinction of humanity itself. Elena nodded gravely. You're absolutely right, General. This decision could doom our species. She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle over the room. But consider this: if we abandon the Etherians to genocide, what does that say about what humanity has become? If we let fear override the principles that make us human, are we really worth preserving? Colonel Martinez accessed strategic databases, bringing up humanity's military history. Admiral, our entire species has built its reputation on achieving impossible victories against overwhelming odds. From ancient Thermopylae to the Battle of Earth during the Krolex invasion, Humans have consistently found ways to defeat superior enemies through innovation, determination, and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Elena smiled grimly. Exactly. Colonel, the Vorthans expect conventional warfare fought by species that think like them. They've conquered civilizations that tried to match their technology and tactics. But humanity has never been conventional. She called up classified files on humanity's most advanced weapons projects. For the past 20 years, we've been developing asymmetrical warfare systems designed specifically to counter technologically superior enemies. The Vorthans may have better ships and more advanced energy weapons, but they've forgotten the fundamental principles of warfare that humanity has never abandoned. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of Advanced Weapons Development, activated a secured holographic display. Admiral, Project Prometheus is ready for deployment. We've spent decades studying alien technology and developing countermeasures. Our stealth systems can render entire fleets invisible to Vorthan sensors. Our new kinetic weapons can punch through their energy shields like they don't exist. Elena examined the weapon's specifications with growing excitement. Humanity's approach to warfare had always differed from galactic norms, where other species developed sophisticated energy weapons and elegant defensive systems. Humans built devastating kinetic weapons and found innovative ways to deliver overwhelming force to precisely targeted points. The Vorthans are accustomed to fighting species that follow predictable patterns. Elena explained to the assembled officers they expect orderly battle formations, conventional escalation, and standard tactical responses. We're going to give them chaos. The debate continued for hours, with voices raised on both sides of the argument. Some officers argued for humanity's survival above all else. Others insisted that abandoning the Etherians would fundamentally change what it meant to be human. But gradually, consensus began to emerge around a simple truth. If humanity was to have any meaning in the galaxy, it had to stand for something more than mere survival. The final vote was close but decisive. The Earth Defense Command authorized Operation Debt of Honor, the largest military mobilization in human history. Every available ship would be committed to the defense of Etherian space, regardless of the cost to humanity. Within hours, mobilization orders went out across human space. Reserve fleets were activated. Construction facilities began working around the clock to outfit merchant vessels with weapon systems, and volunteers flooded recruitment centers faster than they could be processed. Word had spread throughout human space about the mission's purpose, and citizens demanded the right to honor humanity's debt. Elena stood once again at the observation deck, watching as Earth's orbital shipyards worked frantically to prepare humanity's fleet for a war they might not survive. But for the first time in decades, she felt a profound sense of peace. 50 years ago, the Etherians had shown her what it meant to value life above all practical considerations. Tomorrow, humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to honor a debt that could never truly be repaid. Honor thy debt. Human fleet that assembled at the Proxima staging area was unlike anything that had ever sailed between the stars. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Remembrance, watching as nearly 400 vessels moved into formation. At the fleet's core were 47 capital ships, their hulls bristling with humanity's most advanced weapons. But the fleet's true innovation lay in its unconventional composition. Surrounding the military vessels were converted merchant ships, mining platforms, and even luxury passenger liners that had been hastily retrofitted with experimental weapon systems. To outside observers, significant portions of the fleet would appear to be a refugee convoy rather than a military armada. This illusion was entirely intentional. Admiral, we're receiving final fleet readiness reports, announced Commander Torres, Elena's communications officer. All vessels report green status for jump to Etherian space. Elena nodded, her aged hand steady on the command railing. Despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt, at 73, she had insisted on commanding the mission personally. Over the strenuous objections of Earth's leadership, her argument had been simple. She was the only human who truly understood Etherian culture, and this mission required more than military expertise. Signal all ships to prepare for hyperspace translation, Elena ordered, and patch me through to the fleet-wide communication channel. As her image appeared on screens throughout the human fleet, Elena saw faces that represented the best of what humanity could offer. These men and women had volunteered for what most considered a suicide mission, driven not by glory or conquest, but by a simple principle: when someone saves your life, you don't abandon them when they need help. People of Earth, brave souls of the human fleet, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly across the communication channels. 50 years ago, I learned what it meant to be saved by beings who asked nothing in return. Today, we have the opportunity to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. We sail not for conquest or glory, but to honor a debt that defines who we are as a species. The journey to Etherian space took 6 days through folded spacetime, during which the fleet conducted constant combat drills and refinements of their tactical plans. Elena had assembled humanity's finest strategic minds to develop battle plans that threw away centuries of accepted space warfare doctrine. Colonel Rodriguez, the fleet's chief tactical officer, had spent months studying Vorthan military records, captured during their expansion campaigns. The enemy expects conventional fleet engagements, she explained during the final strategy briefing. Organized battle lines, predictable escalation patterns, and standard tactical responses. We're going to give them something they've never encountered: organized chaos. As they approached Etherian space, long-range sensors began detecting signs of the systematic destruction the Vorthans had wrought. Entire star systems showed evidence of orbital bombardment, their planets stripped of resources and atmospheres vented into space. The Etherians' peaceful, life-nurturing civilization was being methodically erased from existence. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Etherian refugee fleet," reported the communications officer, her voice tight with emotion. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar form of Elder Synth. 50 years had changed the Etherian leader dramatically. His bioluminescent patterns were dim and erratic, his graceful movements now labored with exhaustion and grief. Behind him, Elena could see other Etherians working frantically at what appeared to be severely damaged control systems. "Elena, dear friend," Elder Synth's voice carried across the communication link with the same musical quality she remembered, though now it was heavy with sorrow. "You have grown old, as is the way of your rapid species. I feared we would never meet again, especially under such tragic circumstances." Elena stepped forward, tears flowing freely down her weathered face. "Elder Synth, I gave you my word 50 years ago. I promised that humanity would remember your kindness. We keep our promises." The Etherian leader's patterns brightened slightly, the first sign of hope Elena had seen in his expression. "I see that now, though I fear you have arrived too late to save much of what we were. Our homeworld of synthesis fell 6 days ago. The great libraries, repositories of knowledge gathered over millions of years, were reduced to ash. The Vorthans are systematically hunting down our remaining refugee ships." Elena's expression hardened with determination. "Elder Synth, I'm Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to ensure that doesn't happen. Can you provide us with current intelligence on Vorthan fleet positions and capabilities?" The data package that Elder Synth transmitted made the human tactical computers issue priority alerts. The Vorthan hunting fleet consisted of over 800 capital ships supported by thousands of escort vessels. They had the surviving Etherian refugee fleet trapped in the debris field of what had once been the Etherians' most beautiful garden world, slowly tightening their formation while savoring their impending final victory. "Our remaining ships are hiding among the asteroid remains of Harmony Prime," Elder Synth explained, his mental voice heavy with despair. "Perhaps 300,000 of our people survive on 47 vessels. The Vorthans are taking their time, enjoying the hunt before they move in for the final extermination." Elena studied the tactical display with growing excitement rather than despair. The Vorthan fleet was arranged in a perfect hunting formation, designed to prevent any escape while maximizing the psychological terror of their trapped prey. It was exactly the kind of predictable, conventional arrangement that humanity's unconventional tactics were designed to exploit. "Colonel Rodriguez," Elena said, turning to her tactical officer. "Initiate Operation Trojan Horse. Signal the fleet. We're going in." The human fleet approached the battle zone in a formation that had never been used in galactic warfare. The heavily armed capital ships hung back while the converted civilian vessels moved forward in what appeared to be a desperate evacuation attempt to Vorthan sensors. It looked like a poorly organized rescue mission by a primitive species. "Commander, Vex of the Vorthan hunting fleet received the intelligence reports with amusement rather than concern." "Humans," he hissed through his reptilian vocal cords, his scaled features twisting into an expression of contempt. "The primitive warmongers think they can interfere with imperial justice. Destroy them quickly and return to the main task." What Commander Vex didn't understand was that those primitive civilian vessels carried humanity's most advanced weapons disguised as refugee supplies. Each converted merchant ship was essentially a massive missile platform, loaded with kinetic projectiles specifically designed to penetrate Vorthan shielding. The battle began with humanity's signature tactical innovation: control chaos. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, human ships scattered across 3 dimensions, each following seemingly random flight patterns that confused Vorthan targeting computers. The converted civilian vessels suddenly revealed their true nature, launching thousands of kinetic projectiles that struck Vorthan ships. before their energy shields could adapt. Elena watched from the Remembrance's bridge as humanity's unconventional tactics began taking their toll on the superior Vorthan fleet. Kinetic weapons performing as expected, reported the tactical officer. Enemy shields are optimized for energy weapons. They're being punched through like tissue paper. But numbers still mattered, and the Vorthans had overwhelming superiority. In raw firepower, human ships began falling under concentrated fire from enemy dreadnoughts, their crews dying to buy time for the Etherean evacuation. Elena knew they couldn't win a prolonged engagement, but they didn't need to win. They just needed to create enough chaos to allow the refugees to escape. Admiral, Elder Synth's voice came through the communication channel. Our ships are clear of the debris field. The evacuation route is open. Elena smiled grimly as she watched Vorthan formations collapse into disarray. Under humanity's relentless asymmetrical assault, Elder Synth, take your people and run. Find a safe harbor in distant space. Humanity will hold them here as long as possible. No, dear Elena, the Etherean leader replied, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with sudden determination. We will not abandon those who came to save us. Our ships may not be warships, but we have other capabilities. Elena watched in amazement as the Etherean refugee fleet turned back toward the battle. Their vessels began emitting strange energy patterns that interfered with Vorthan sensors and communications. The hunting fleet, which had maintained perfect coordination throughout their genocidal campaign, suddenly found themselves blind and deaf in the chaos of battle. The tide turned when humanity's secret weapon finally revealed itself. The UES Prometheus, a massive vessel that had been disguised as a cargo hauler, dropped its camouflage to reveal humanity's first planet cracker weapon, the kinetic projectile. It fired was the size of a small asteroid, accelerated to near-light speed by gravitational manipulation technology. The projectile struck the Vorthan flagship like the fist of an angry god, the kinetic impact creating a brief artificial star that consumed dozens of nearby enemy vessels. The sight of their supposedly invincible commander's ship being obliterated in an instant broke the Vorthan fleet's morale completely. Commander Vex, his flagship crippled and half his fleet destroyed or fleeing, sent one final transmission before his ship's life support failed. What are you? He demanded, his voice filled with disbelief. Elena responded personally, her aged face appearing on every functioning Vorthan screen. We are humans. We remember our debts, and we protect our friends. Remember that when you report to your empire. The aftermath of the battle changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. News spread quickly that the mighty Vorthan Empire had been defeated by a supposedly primitive species using tactics that no one had ever seen before. More importantly, word spread about why humanity had intervened, not for conquest or resources, but to honor a 50-year-old debt to beings who had saved one human life. In the months that followed, 17 different species reached out to Earth requesting defensive alliances. The galaxy had learned that humanity was a species that valued honor above survival, and that made them the most dangerous enemies and the most valuable allies imaginable. Elena stood once more on the observation deck of Luna Command, but now she was not alone. Elder Synth had taken up residence on Earth while his people established new colonies in human-protected space. The Etherean leader had aged visibly during the crisis, but his bioluminescent patterns had regained their vibrant beauty. The universe did indeed balance its debts, Elder Synth observed, his musical voice carrying notes of profound contentment. We saved one human life 50 years ago. In return, humanity saved our entire species. Elena smiled, her weathered hands steady as she gazed out at the stars that no longer seemed quite so hostile. Elder Synth, I think we both learned something important. The most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or weapons or superior numbers. It's the simple decision to do what's right, regardless of the cost. The Etherean leader's patterns pulsed in what Elena now recognized as deep philosophical agreement. Indeed, dear friend. And perhaps that is the most human lesson of all. That sometimes the greatest strength comes from remembering that we are all connected, all precious, all worthy of sacrifice. As Earth's sun set behind the lunar horizon, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her from a dying xenobiologist in an alien cave to the architect of humanity's greatest victory. The debt had been repaid, but more importantly, it had been transformed into something greater, a bond between species that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. The universe, as Elder Synth had predicted, had indeed found its balance.